This Ag News Update brought to you by American Implement. Indebted to the past, committed to the future. In a moment, Ag in the Courtroom with Dr. Roger McEowen.
Wolfter Construction and Irrigation has been around a long time, and a lot of folks have trusted them to design, build, and service all sizes of commercial and on-farm storage for grain and equipment. Wolfter is also known for their outstanding irrigation division, where they stock a complete selection of nozzles, regulators, drops, gear drives, electrical, and structure components. Looking for an electric motor? Wolfter has a large selection in single and three-phase. Next time, reach out to the pros who have decades of experience at taking care of business the right way. Wolfter Construction and Irrigation.
The cost of everything has gone up dramatically over the last 75 years. With one exception: keeping electricity affordable.
Wheatland Electric, delivering energy for life, your Touchstone Energy Cooperative.
And joining us is Dr. Roger McEowen, who with Washburn University, Ag Law and the Policy Specialist, the Kansas Farm Bureau. Chair there at the Washburn. Roger, time for yet again another Ag in the Courtroom segment, and we've got a couple of, I think, very interesting ones to talk about, and one of those is one that I think could be talked about every week, and that is noxious weeds and even the seeds of those noxious weeds.
Yeah, I would say, Ken, in terms of the issues that I deal with, of course, tax is going to be far and away the where I get the most questions and comments and requests for speaking engagements in estate planning and business planning. Then after that, I think it comes down to fence law and lease law, and shortly after that, it's weeds of all things. Whether it's a noxious weed that's listed on the state noxious weed list, or whether it's just a weed problem, it does create a lot of legal issues. And so, and that's the way I break it down. If we've got a weed that's on the state list, and as you know, the legislature modified the Kansas statute the session before this most recent session, and kicked a lot more control of listing of weeds back to the counties, which is in my view, that's a great idea, because what's a weed in St. Francis, Kansas may not be a problem in Pittsburgh, Kansas. Just a huge geographical distance. But we want to start with the listed weed. And from a legal standpoint, there is a responsibility of a landowner to affirmatively control weeds that are listed on the state list. And you've got to do so in a manner that is not negligent. You can't create a problem in doing that. Then we get into other issues. Well, what if the weeds are in a fence line? What if they're in a road ditch? What if they're in a rail line? Those all present their own unique legal issues.
Well, it does, and I think, with the interesting year we've had, not necessarily with all the COVID situation, but with the weather, it brought on maybe some different challenges when it comes to control, and also just where and how to control those, and whose real responsibility that is.
Yeah, the control issue is a big issue, and it doesn't matter in that instance whether we're talking noxious weeds or non-noxious, other than the fact that if it is a listed noxious weed and you as the landowner don't control it, you're ultimately responsible, even if that land is leased and the tenant has responsibility for that. If they don't, then the county is going to come out and control it, and they're going to send the bill to the landowner because it's going to get added to the property tax bill. And the tenant, for defalcating on their responsibility, they're defaulting on their responsibility, is probably going to get themselves terminated under the lease in that instance. So it's ultimately the landowner's responsibility on listed weeds to control them. But the one thing that doesn't matter whether it's listed or non-listed is if you control them, you have to do so in a manner that doesn't make the problem worse. You can't do it negligently. And I often refer people to a case a few years ago out of North Dakota where a farmer complained to his neighbor, hey, you got a problem in your CRP ground with kochia and Russian thistle. So he said, oh, I want to take care of the problem. So he does on a windy day, but he goes out and fires up his combine and combines the weeds. And of course, it scatters all over the place, causes $80,000 of damages to the neighbor in terms of his cleanup costs, reduced yields, all types of economic loss. And the court said, yeah, even though these are noxious weeds, you have a duty to control them. You can't do so negligently, or if you do, you're going to be held responsible. If they're in a fence line and you can't agree with your neighbor, call the county commissioners in Kansas. Have them come out and view that, because that's part of maintaining a fence line, which is in the purview of county commissioners. They can assign responsibility for weed cleanup that affects maintenance of the fence. And in eastern Kansas, we get into issues with vines, and that can create big problems. Different issues out in western Kansas.
We're talking with Dr. Roger McEowen, kind of a ag in the courtroom with him, and we will tell you how to gain more information about these topics we're talking about. We'll be back with more in just a moment.
Would you like to see something done about high gas prices and low unemployment? Western Place Energy in Campus, Kansas is doing something about it. They're a proud part of Growth Energy, America's ethanol supporters, and they employ 38 people and will be adding more following the expansion. Ethanol fuel not only reduces the cost of regular gasoline, it's good for the environment and keeps money right here in the United States while supporting local rural jobs. Western Plains Energy, doing something for the future.
Day and night till the job is done, Teeter is the one that works for you. Fields of green reaching toward the sun, Teeter is the one that works for you. Teeter is the one, Teeter is the one that works for you. Teeter Irrigation, your source for water management.
And our guest this week is Dr. Roger McEowen, who ag law professor and the tax specialist at the Washburn University. And of course, Roger's done a lot of tax seminars. A lot of folks have been at the time at K-State, Iowa State, and here at Washburn as well. And we will let folks know how to get more information about these topics. The next one, Roger, is one that we don't deal with a lot here, but could have impact in Kansas, and that is simply right to farm.
That's right. Every state has a right to farm law, and they vary in their types, but Kansas does have one. And there's the Indiana statute may be on its way to the United States Supreme Court, and it's not every day we get to see a right to farm law be perhaps considered by the U.S. Supreme Court. It happened in 1998 with the Iowa statute, and they refused to hear the case that time. But now the facts and the outcome are kind of flipped around. In the Iowa case, the Iowa Supreme Court unanimously held that one of the two versions of the Iowa Right to Farm Act was actually unconstitutional. And the U.S. Supreme Court declined to hear that case to possibly overturn it. But what happened in that one was you had a right to farm law that, at least in part, gave the authority to the County Board of Supervisors, which is the counterpart to county commissioners in Kansas. And they said, well, farmers can petition the county board for, I believe it was a 900-acre area, and the farmers in that area cannot be sued on a nuisance theory. And what they were trying to do is provide protection to confined hog operations, particularly in northwest Iowa. And the court said, you can't do that. That's unconstitutional, because now you're saying the people that are just outside the designated area that are affected by the odors don't respect boundaries, can't sue for a nuisance. And you can't do that. That's a taking of a private property right, the right to be free from nuisance, and it's a bestowing of an easement to create odors on the part of the farmers that are in the area. Well, the Indiana statute, and these right to farm laws are good laws, because the whole idea, by the way, Ken, is we want to have a provision that says if I'm a farmer and I'm out there farming, minding my business, I've got all my state and federal permits, and I'm using good husbandry practices, and then somebody develops next to me and they move in and they buy an acreage and they come next to me. Well, it wouldn't be fair for them to complain that during harvest season it's dust and there's lights at night, and there's noise, and if I've got livestock, then there are odors, and it's not the pastoral, quiet scene that these people from town thought it would be. So it's not fair that they should sue. Well, the Indiana statute, and a number of other states have done this in recent years, is they've said, well, we want to provide additional protection to farming operations and say, if you were there first farming and then somebody moves in, you can then modify your farming operation to whatever you want to do. If you want to go from row crop to thousands upon thousands head of livestock, you still are grandfathered in, so to speak. You can't be sued on a nuisance theory because you're still ag. And this created a case in Kansas or in Indiana involving the same family members, different generations. And the Indiana Supreme Court said, yeah, you can increase your size of anything. You can go from row crop to 8,000 head of confinement hogs, a quarter mile away from Grandpa's home, and Grandpa can't sue. And so the Indiana Court of Appeals upheld that, and there's been a request by the United States Supreme Court to hear the case. So we'll have to see what happens.
Well, Roger, I think that's going to be very interesting, something to keep our eye on as, many of us look to possibly expand livestock in certain areas and certain ways. So I think this could have implications even beyond, as we look at moving forward. So, Roger, if folks want to learn more, and we just scratch the surface on both these issues. TV sometimes cuts down our time. So if they want to read more of your thoughts on noxious weeds, as well as possibly right to farm, going at least a state right to farm, going to the Supreme Court, how can they learn more, and how can they follow along with other of your thoughts?
Sure, they can go to my website and they can find my blog. These are what we're referring to here are two recent articles I posted on my blog. I do that about 130 times a year with these detailed articles. And down the left-hand side of my homepage, they'll find a link for the Agricultural Law and Taxation blog. And there's another link they can sign up for an email alert. So they can get an email alert every time I add something to the site. And that's just washburnlaw.edu/Walter, WALTR, the Washburn Agricultural Law and Tax Report.
All right. Well, as always, great to catch up. I'm sure we'll do this again here, probably the next maybe couple of weeks or a couple of months anyway, when more issues come up, and we'll maybe see what develops with these as well. So thanks for your time.
Sure. Thank you, Ken.
Roger McEowen from Washburn University, another session of Ag in the Courtroom. Stay with us. We'll have more coming up.
S&S Trailer Sales, with 2 locations in Ness City, Kansas, is where everybody goes to buy or rent trailers. They feature the all-new, all-aluminum Mauer grain trailer with all of the electric options, the easy-to-load detached trailers, and a huge stock of header trailers. At the west location, you'll find bumper pulls, goosenecks, and oilfield specialty trailers, along with flat and utility beds for pickups. S&S Trailer Sales in Ness City and on the web, but remember, you do have to spell out the and. When you've had a best friend for over 50 years, you develop a trust. And the Scott Co-op has been a trusted rural friend since 1957. A co-op keeps money in the area, doing business for and with their members. And that helps keep their hometown thriving with keeping money in the community. Scott Co-op is not just an elevator. It's the rural way of doing business. So, when you see an elevator, remember your friends at Scott Co-op.
1030 KBUF has ag programming daily beginning a little bit after 6 in the morning. We have market reports and ag news updates throughout the day and weather forecasts you can depend on to plan your activities. Be social with us on Facebook and Twitter. And also remember, you can hear KBUF and other Southwind broadcasting stations online at westernkansasnews.com. I'm Ken Rogers. Thanks for watching.